Good morning from Mirador, this time presenting the Wild West of Sussex as opposed to Lewes in East Sussex. My name is Philip. Keith Hayes, the boss, has asked me to present at least the first part of the show this morning. He may join us at some stage. It's just gone 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of April. I hope you all had a pleasant Easter. There was at least some reasonable weather, certainly down here. In terms of the weather, the Lewis forecast isn't the best. Early rain, and then between 11 and 4 p.m, high winds, but drying up with some sunny intervals. It's similar over here in the west. It's pretty murky out there at the moment, and it's also very drizzly. I've had the pleasure of putting my bins out, so I got rather wet, but I'm back indoors now with the pleasure of presenting Mirador for part of this morning. In terms of the national news, which I take from the BBC website, I don't take hard copy newspapers anymore, dominated of course by the deaths of, well, some might suggest the murder of 7 aid workers with a Palestinian driver in a clearly marked aid vehicle, 3 of whom British veterans, working as security for the aid workers themselves. They are adamant, or they were adamant, that they had the permission and acquiescence of the Israeli military. But what even the Israelis, and I stress that in a very emphatic way, even the Israelis, given what they're actually doing out there, and this highly unpopular man, Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, we had a chap on a couple of weeks ago with Stuart Dolby called Richard Porges, and he, a Jew himself, and with family in Israel and friends, was telling us all, if you watched it, just how hated Netanyahu is, stating that if he weren't in power, he'd be in prison. Ultra right wing, very pro-settler, and very anti the Palestinian state. But even the Israeli Defense Force have accepted that the killing of the aid workers was a, quote, grave error. The other issue in the news that continues and won't, in my view, won't go away for some time, if at all, is the passing in Scotland of what we are calling the Hate Crime Act, whereby almost anything said that is detrimental to any area of society, be it gender, sex, transgender, colour, and so on, religion, ethnicity, whatever, is prosecutable. Broad brush, the police themselves up there are having kittens because they just see this as now there's going to be an absolute dam bust of complaints. They're obliged to follow them up, the time it's going to take. And of course, a number of high-profile people, in particular J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter author, amongst others, has always been against it. And as a form of protest, when it was passed recently, she sent out a series of posts, particularly with its relevance to trans people, because she has always been adamant that you actually cannot change yourself biologically. And she has told people face to face who claim to be female but were once men that you are a man. And she's dared them. She's actually dared them to prosecute her, as it tells like a test case. And even Rishi Sunak, our dear Prime Minister, has come partially off the fence, which is rather brave of him, to say that we need to defend free speech. There is, it is said, a form of defence in the Act where if the comments are justifiable, then you have a defence if you are charged. But frankly, as a retired lawyer myself, it's all very well saying that, but not having read the statute, my suspicion is that it is for you as the person charged, the defendant, who bears what we call the burden of proof to show that what you said or wrote or broadcast was justifiable. So the burden will be, and there are other examples in English law of that burden shifting from the prosecution to the person charged to prove they were justified in saying, doing, broadcasting, whatever they did themselves. Well, on Easter Monday, the public saw, I think for the first time since his diagnosis, King Charles in the flesh. He attended an Easter service at Windsor. He had a walkabout later, met people together with Camilla, his queen, and admirably appeared in good spirits. Although I have read that observers who know about the effects of chemotherapy and actually having nursed or helped as best I could two very close friends who endured chemotherapy, I know the effects of chemotherapy and it's awful. It depends on the cancer, and we don't know what I don't think we know what Charles's problems are. But no, observers have noticed that he's already lost weight. Not that he had much to lose anyway. His lips are very thin and rather bluish, and there's a certain pallor to his face. So clearly he is undergoing some pretty serious chemotherapy, and as with anybody fighting the big C, we must wish him well. Now there was an Asian journalist who wrote for an Iranian either TV program, I think, or beyond, who was stabbed quite brutally by three men in public last week. Mercifully, he didn't die. He's being treated in critical care even now. But what worries me is that they have discovered that the three perpetrators, who they have identified, were able to leave the country within hours of the attack. And it concerns me that it is that easy, apparently just by straightforward civilian transport, no doubt under false names, etc. But they are now out of the country and therefore beyond our jurisdiction and any punishment that our system can bring upon them, no doubt on their way back to wherever the powers that be ordered them to try and assassinate this man. In a similar vein, it appears that Vladimir Putin, aka Rasputin, is interested in a prisoner swap. There are a number of Western prisoners, some actually in jail, charged with espionage or anti-Russian activity. And there's one particular chap who the West believe has been stitched up as usual, and needs to be released. In a German prison is a rather nasty so-called Russian patriot who is a double assassin in that, again, in broad daylight, on a motorcycle, in a mask and a wig, gunned down two people, one in Moscow, and because it was in Moscow, there are no details released because it was clearly a governmental directed killing, but one in Germany, and he was apprehended. He was seen to discard the mask and the wig and ride away, but somehow they managed to stop him, prosecute him, and he's currently in prison. But Putin, if one believes it, is apparently very keen on doing a prisoner swap. Well, if you ever watch that wonderful film, Bridge of Spies, with Tom Hanks in it, where some very shady and murky work was done to prevent the trial, or even the punishment of a convicted Russian spy, and a swap was done with an American serviceman over Checkpoint Charlie. And the film conveys, in my opinion, the film conveys the sheer, not just the shadiness of it, but the tension of it. Both sides being highly suspicious of the other, inevitably, during the Cold War, and exchanging the prisoners. And the bitter twist in the tale of that film was that Hanks, who played a lawyer, but not a criminal lawyer, but he was pulled out of some commercial firm to represent this spy, and did his very best, but became increasingly unpopular because he actually defended him properly, whereas it was expected of him by the Americans to just, go through the motions, but his integrity led him to do otherwise. And in the end, he became the target of abuse and attacks on his home and the like. And then when it was all over, he went back to his old non-criminal law offices and he was shut out. That was the end of his career, certainly with that firm. So it was a very bitter ending, all told. Now I see Keith is in the background. Hello, Keith.
Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Keith. How are you today?
Not too bad. Listening avidly to your assessment of the news. Very interesting.
It's nothing like as detailed as yours, Keith, because you have access to the papers and so on. It's just a resume, 15, 20-minute resume before Suzi joins us, as I hope she will.
Well, you should be a newspaper editor because you covered everything very well. Of course,
you do butter me up, Mr. Hayes. Flattery will get you nowhere.
I keep trying.
Well, funny you should say what you've said, because from school days, and it amazed my schoolmasters in English, I've always been blessed with this ability to précis. That has contributed massively to what was a relatively successful career at the bar, because if you can speed read and then gather it up in a nutshell, it helps hugely with being a barrister, particularly if you're working literally on the hoof, paperwork on the day. But there we are. How was your Easter, Keith?
Supine in the main. I'm afraid I was going to be a good boy, and God stopped me for some strange reason, because I took a shower on Sunday morning, left the shower, and immediately fell over.
Oh dear.
And well, in some ways it's a blessing in disguise, because it just shows the stupidity of the NHS and how A doesn't talk to B, because I've been for a month trying hard to get an appointment with my doctor.
Yes, you've said, yes.
But when I fell over, because I've got Parkinson's, they send out a paramedic team.
Yes.
Arming people who bring in the machinery, and over half an hour check you out. They take ECG and blood and everything. So I know that apart from the effects of Parkinson's, which can be devastating, but there's nothing else wrong with me. So I got my doctor's appointment on Sunday morning, after I managed to scramble to my feet and have a paramedic team in.
Well, at least you're being looked after. But you say you have now managed to get a doctor's appointment?
No, not yet.
I see what you mean. You mean in place? Yeah, I get what you meant now. Sorry. Yeah. Your doctor's appointment was a visit from the paramedics.
Yes, that's right.
Well, did you hurt yourself when you fell?
Luckily, no. I have the ability to fall, because it happens fairly frequently.
Yes.
I have the ability to fall without hurting myself. The only thing is if there's anything in the way.
Well, that's the point, isn't it?
Now, luckily, there was only the shower behind me, and there was nothing in the shower that could harm me except the back wall. I cracked my head against that, but the skull is so thick. There is no harm, no damage.
Well, there is a very old saying, certainly where I'm from, where there's no sense, there's no feeling.
Then that's me all over.
You're obviously there's it's called a doctrine in criminal, well, and in personal injury cases, it's called the eggshell rule, and you have to take your victim as you find him or her. And if it so happens, like with many people, they've got a very fragile skull. Even if you tap them on the head and you fracture their skull, it's not contributory at all. It's your fault.
Philip, like you, I have to go to the loo, believe it or not. So can I leave you for 2 minutes?
Yes, please do. Please do.
You're doing a great job.
Well, that's Keith, ladies and gentlemen, as we watch his back amble, but without falling over, to the loo in the Black Horse Inn, where he generally broadcasts from. Those of you who watch him and know him, he's a plucky devil. He's got this Parkies, and he falls over a lot more than he lets on. But thankfully, he has got a very thick skull, it would seem, and he's learned how to fall. Somebody in their 80s, it's absolutely admirable. Someone I speak to every Monday, if you're not aware, he's worth listening to, is an 88-year-old chap who lives in Normandy called Harry Atherton. A man to use the colloquial, who has all of his marbles. His knowledge of the world at large, but particularly the Americas, is quite extraordinary, from north to south. He has some extremely strong, I can't label his views, he's neither left nor right. It may be he's centrist, but he has strong views either way, particularly about what we call climate change, particularly about what we call net zero, which he deplores, particularly about the state of the nation in the United States, where he, as in Canada, he lived and worked for a long time. So he's also a very old friend of Keith's, which through the journalism which Keith did in North America, Canada. And so that's the link there. And I'm happy to say that so far so good with Harry, who was kind enough to, as it were, let me in. And we seem so far so good to, as it were, fire off each other. Keith stands in the background on the link, and as he once did exclusively, he comes in with the odd comment or question or clarification, but generally it's me and Harry, and that's 10 o'clock on Mondays usually, with Harry from Normandy. I'm just mentioning, what a good program so far us and Harry has proven to be.
Indeed. It is in many ways. I'm very open and discuss things that normally television stations or business people would only talk about in private. But what Mirador television is always developing, and if I find what I call a powerful combination, is then I encourage it to appear as often as possible. And you and Harry are a very powerful combination. I sit on the sidelines because you need a punch bag once in a while, but it is a very, very good program.
Heaven forfend that we would use you as a punch bag. I'll leave Harry to do that with the British government, the Canadian government, Biden, Trump, Putin, net zero, climate change. I mean, Harry doesn't need a punch bag. He's got so many targets.
Well, the thing is, I look at him, and when I was chatting to him yesterday, is he's a thinker, and when he sees something, he obviously researches it extremely well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No. His statistics are impressive. He obviously does research it, and then applies that, like with yours, to your own life and journalistic experience. I don't know what's gone wrong, because you've used the link that I sent. I asked Suzi to join us at 8:15, but as yet there's no sign.
No, and she confirmed yesterday that she will be on with you this morning.
Look, I'll just check.
Resend the link.
I'm confident that I sent that link. Yes, I need to send her another link, I'm afraid. Bear with me.
But while Philip is doing that, just following on, one of my pet bugaboos is I woke up at about, I went to bed early, as I often do, woke up about 1 o'clock and put on the television very briefly, and there was an early morning news on the BBC. And I thought, well, I'll catch up. How on earth the BBC can, in all conscience, say that it has got a standard of broadcasting? Because the girl, well, I call her a girl, her ability to read the news or to present is appalling. I would never, ever let her on Mirador television, let alone the BBC. Yes.
About whom are we talking?
Sorry?
About whom are you talking?
Well, I was saying that
No,
we were talking about that I flatter you. And on the contrary, I have a very good eye for potential broadcasters. And I said that I actually select people very, very, very well. I shouldn't say carefully, because they come from all sorts of walks of life, and I meet them in all sorts of different places. But the BBC seems to have lack ability to get people of value, of ability for this type of programming. They don't seem to be able to do it at all.
Well, you may remember I got very cross, as did the veterans of this country, when
thanks, Declan.
And in my view, a bimbo-ish, doll-type female presenter on BBC Breakfast referred to the infamous Dambuster raid, and it went viral. And she never apologized. She obviously can't, she hasn't got the brains to correct herself using an auto cue. I'm going to let Suzi in. Our pleasure.
Good morning.
Good morning, Scorpio.
Hello, I've been with you for a while. I just couldn't find a link anywhere.
No, I don't know what went wrong. It's me being, as usually, incompetent, but there we are. Keith is a very unlucky charm. He insists on lurking in the background and watching me, and pulls me up on almost everything.
Sometimes he needs pulling up himself, doesn't he, off the floor?
Yeah, well, as
I certainly do.
As on Easter Sunday, apparently. I can't see you, Suzi.
No.
Gone blank, dear lady.
Not done anything.
Right.
The camera.
I'll remove you and bring you back on.
Is that the one you want?
There we are.
Yeah, just
Am I there now?
As you can see in the background, Declan, that marvel of a landlord, is giving Keith breakfast, coffee, wiping his nose, wiping other parts of it.
Well, Keith's gone black now, so he's doing something.
Well, he's put something in front. The crafty old rogue has put something in front of the camera, Suzi.
So you can.
There you are.
We've got an extra camera.
All right. So good morning, Declan. Where's mine?
Good morning. I'll do it in a minute. What are you putting on?
I'll have to pop in and say hello one morning.
Me, I got a camera pointing at me. That's the one that we use to point outside.
Pointing outside?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's nothing distracting about this. I'm going to take Keith off stage for a minute. Hello, Suzi. How are you today?
Hi, Philip. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, you're looking very well.
Thank you. And you are?
Well, funnily enough, for the last few days, I've had, very unusual for me, I've had this really uncomfortable eye irritation. And my wife thinks it might be pollen, but I've never been susceptible to hay fever or stuff like that. But I've just got these stingy, dry eyes.
Right. Do you know, my partner's just had it, and he's only just started it too. And he got it first out in Fuerteventura, and he had it recently, and he also thinks that it's the pollen. So
Right. Well, that supports Jackie's theory.
yeah, and I think
Um,
perhaps some changes in the environment. You never know what's in the pollen these days.
well, you don't. And another thing that's happened here is that I had mentioned it to you sometime, we've now had all our trees pollarded.
Yes.
In other words, everything has come down to the bare trunk. And they've left it rather late. And I think the sap was already rising
Right.
with the trees. That could have contributed to it. Plus, of course, you've got all the blossom, spring
Yeah.
coming on, but it is
And
a
all the
pain.
hedgerows are being cut down as well,
Yes, yeah.
So
in
lots of
season.
things are being released into the atmosphere.
Did you have a pleasant Easter?
Do you know what I had? Well, not having my children was different, but I had the best Easter in terms of sort of mental well-being. I just had the most peaceful, beautiful weekend.
Oh,
And
marvellous.
yeah, but I didn't really do Easter because I don't have anyone to do an Easter egg hunt for anymore. So I did lots of painting. I'm decorating the rooms now. The lodges have disappeared.
I'll leave it
My
at that.
partner's building a cabana in the garden, and I did this most beautiful walk on Easter Sunday. I saw lambs, I saw deer, I got lost in the woods. It was just fabulous.
Now you just be careful getting lost in the woods. You know what happens in woods.
What?
Look after yourself, Scorpio, or keep that tail well sharpened.
Yes, on my little
with
doggy
red-
with me. But yeah,
Well,
I like getting lost though.
It sounds like. Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
we
people
don't-
should get lost more often. Not in that
Well,
respect, but otherwise you
I
don't
think-
use your senses to actually, to find your bearings. And I use nature. I followed a badger and a fox tracks. I thought, well, if the badgers and foxes know where they're going, then I'll follow their route. So using your tracking experience. So I do think that people should get lost at least once a year.
Well, when we were much younger here, and we are surrounded by woodland still here. I mean, when the Dam Road, A27 new bypass eventually goes through, it will wreck a lot of that, sadly. But I would get lost, and not deliberately, regularly in the woods. My sense of direction is pathetic. Most times I was quite lucky because there were other people in this very small community who would be walking as well. But no, I would get lost. I mean, when my children went up to the upper primary school, the C of E primary school, the quickest way from where we live here to the primary school was to go through the woods. Nothing could be more simple, you would think. With the kids, they knew where they were going, as children do. Dad didn't. So Dad, on the way back, was stupid enough to be unable to follow or retrace his steps and got completely lost. Quite extraordinary.
Did you panic?
There we are. Well, it sounds to me like you may have had one of the best Easters of late.
Yes, most definitely. The
Marvellous.
weather was beautiful.
Yes, the
And
weather was good.
I was down in the woods near Maresfield, and there was not another person there, and I just loved it. And I used to
Marvellous.
spend a lot of time in Buxton Park looking at the trees because I wanted to learn how to tell directions without having a compass. So if I ever got lost, yeah. So, and you can tell by the trees. So I did spend a lot of time measuring branches and looking at the direction of the branches of the trees, because all the branches reach out to the south. So if you look at a tree, it's like a tick. So the north is where the sort of straight arm of the tree is, because they're all trying to reach for the sun. So you can work out which direction to go.
Well, you've reminded me of a very moving and true story. A once enslaved Black American lady who managed to escape, but instead of thinking about herself, she went back and provided a slave escape route through the various woods from the plantations she knew. And she was asked about, well, how on earth did you know your way, particularly when it was dark? And she said, well, by the trees, because the trees grow a damp moss on the side that doesn't face the sun. So that's always the north, or that direction. And that is how she found her way through and back the woods to work this escape route from her fellow enslaved people to one of the northern states. Extraordinary story.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
That's how I spend a lot of time of just observing. I don't like just people to tell me where to go and where to be. As I do my walks, I take in nature, I take in animal trails, I take in, I'm very visual, so I take in a huge amount of information. And like bits of wool on a fence from the sheep, and I just take those in. So, I'm very good at retracing or working out where I am. I think I've got lost once in a huge golf course over in Kent, and I panicked. I was running around like a headless chicken. So,
Well, the problem with the golf course is there are no trees.
no, there's a disused one, so there's nothing there.
It's just it's not a wasteland, but it's very, very open. Maybe you could have followed the numbers on the flags if there were any numbers. Who knows?
No, it's an unused one. It's disused now, but yeah.
Right.
But I just love that whole sort of adventure, and like when it's like being a child again. I think that's the closest thing I can think of. Is it brings out the inner child walking through the woods, and there was a horse that was charging around in the field, and all the woodland flowers and mossy stumps and everything. It was just fabulous.
Yeah.
But that's my happy place. That and the sea.
No, it sounds brilliant. I mean, my youngest and his girlfriend, for some reason, I insure him to drive my car when he's down, which is very stressful. But actually, in all seriousness, he's a very good driver. But he took my wife to a place near Chichester, which is a vineyard called Tinwell. Not overly cheap, but when they got there, they were well looked after. It was a very good tour. It was a very good instruction and lecture on how they do it. There was ample snacks and finger bites within the price, and some wine tasting of some very nice wines, all English sparkling wines. There was a Blanc de Blanc, which I'm sure you know is the driest. There was a Brut, and then there was a straightforward sparkling Méthode Champenoise. They can't call it champagne because the French get very cross, so they have to call it Méthode Champenoise. But the weather improved that day, and they had a great time. Because it's great when the kids are down, because they do loads of things with Jackie, which really cheers her up. Because I'm a bit of a couch potato, unfortunately. But there we are. It's because of Mirador. I blame Mirador. Until Mirador snaffled me up, I was very active, very popular, very sociable. But Mirador
no excuse.
Mirador. I blame Hayes as well. Mirador has ruined me.
No excuse, Philip.
I've become an isolated, insular hermit.
Incidentally, you mentioned the French registering, if you like, the name champagne. Of course, they shot themselves in the foot because nobody knew about Prosecco until they did that. And now Prosecco is charging up and actually overtaking champagne as a popular drink. It's
God! I mean,
a sparkling drink.
It's my
Prosecco,
drink of choice.
what Prosecco is.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredibly popular. Incredibly popular. Another one that's popular, I mean, may I set out my stall? I don't like any sparkling wine, I'm afraid, at all. A decent still dry white, like a heavily chilled Pinot Grigio, suits me. But for what it's worth, I'm an entirely red man, and French, preferably. But Carver is another one.
You have a
So
fizzy cap.
I agree with Keith. Classic French snobbery, and I think when I see Atherton on Monday, I must ask him about this. Although where he lives, it's not really a wine-producing area. Normandy is cider, far more than when we were there many years ago. They didn't have, beers and wines in the fridge. It was all cider that they liked. What's that creature?
It's my cat Charlie.
That's Charlie. I've got a son called Charlie.
Get your tail out of the way.
And they show you their bum, don't they? They just can't resist it. If a cat gets on face level, I mean, our cat got up here on the table the other day, and gave me a very good view of his bottom. I said, Cosmo, don't. It really is unattractive.
He's coming because he's wet, so he's looking for a nice dry knee to sit on. When he comes to say hello, he's Charlie's. He's gorgeous, Charlie. He's a lovely cat.
No, I'm sure he is. No, oddly enough, ours is not a lap cat. Any attempt to get him on a lap, he'll sit on a chair, but he's not a lap cat. Some cats are, some cats aren't, I find. But what about your rabbits? Do they come up and on your lap if you want them to, or do you not allow that?
Oh, they have free range of the house now. It's hilarious. They sleep under my bed, and Chocolate Bunny, I call it Chocolate Bunny, was making a nest on Saturday evening. I was thinking, oh God, I don't have bunnies for Easter day. It was very, very sweet. But now you see what happens they're so clever that if you block a rabbit, it will do its damnedest to get to where you've blocked it out of curiosity. Once you demystify the house, they just run around and do their own thing all day now.
Yeah.
But they don't like being picked up because they're prey animals. No. But they come and nudge me on the knee, and I'll come and sit next to me on the sofa, and I can give they like to be stroked and have their ears tickled. Yeah. And there's about 6:10 this morning. They all charged off into the garden.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. I like my ear tickled.
I was about to say, are you talking about your rabbits or Keith?
Yes, my rabbits like their ears being tickled.
To tickle his ears, you need to take that bloody hat off. and I'm told you need a crowbar.
But when you do take it off, he's actually got his head's actually shaped like his hat.
Yes, that I can imagine. He horrified me recently when he told me, even at OAP rates, he pays £13 to have not a lot of haircut done, which I find extraordinary.
Yeah,
I know that's a rip-off.
It's a total rip-off. Well, actually, it isn't most things though. We pay well over the odds now for any service.
Yeah. I suppose the other side of the coin is that you get to socialise and you get to talk to other people and get out and about. So there is that side of it.
Yes, that's true. But I suppose the poor old barber, because he's being paid, he has to put up with Keith.
Yeah. Like everybody else.
Unlike the free people of Lewis who avoid him and his scooter like the plague. And understandably so. Now, what I said to him was, just buy, I don't know, Susie, maybe if you got the time, you can help him do this. Just buy one of those hair clippers, battery-powered hair or powered bare hair clippers, and just take off the hair instead of paying £13 to have it done.
So look, if you saw the state of my dog after I'd taken the clippers to Teddy, there's no way you want me to touch your hair, however short it is.
Oh, that's a shame.
Actually, I
I
instruct
would
a
have liked to
barber.
have seen the end result.
I instruct.
I can't take Teddy out for 2 months once I've done his clipping when he's done his hair.
I get the barber to run the clippers, the electric razor over this, because
I might scalp him.
whenever we use lights in television, it makes me look like a completely mad professor. Because
It does.
This stands out against the light. So
No, I can confirm that. You look like something out of Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Mad. If you were able to wobble one of your eyeballs, you'd be mad-eyed Moody.
No, but I can ride a broomstick.
Well, I bet you can. It's called a Red Devil.
Yes.
Well, apparently, if Suzi were let go on your scalp, you would be scalped.
Yeah, with the last of the Mohicans all over again.
And she'll put your scalp up in her kitchen as a memento of what was once your head.
I'm glad I haven't had my breakfast yet.
Can I take 2 minutes and tell you what I think is a funny story about scalping? As a student, way back when I was about 20, I guess, or 21, I was in Canada and I got a job in the middle north part of British Columbia. And it was way in the bush in a summer camp. And I had a motor scooter to get there. And you got onto a track and there was just the rut of the vehicles that had gone along. So I put the scooter on into one of these tracks and off I went. And suddenly ahead of me was what we used to call a red Indian walking along. And I didn't know what to do. You know, would he scalp me if because I was fairly new to the country, or you know, would he be nasty, and so on and so forth. So I came up behind him and said, "Would you like a lift?" And he said, "Yes." And he got on, and we got to our destination. And I don't think that he would reproduce ever.
I think we're meant to call them Native Americans, aren't we? God knows what he called you. Dread to think.
Yes.
Very good story, though. Very good story, though.
No, he is full of very good stories. It's a matter of him remembering them.
Yes.
Which when sadly no
right.
longer, but when the two Bs,
He's a trigger.
when the two Bs were in their pomp, one of us would always trigger something in that brain inside that head, and he'd come out with this string of really cool stories. A man who has lived, to say the least. Well, Suzi, has anything struck you? If you bothered to, in your dream world over Easter, if you bothered to look at the news, has anything struck you as of interest?
I have looked at the news, and I was watching it last night, and I was looking at the horror of the aid workers that were killed in Gaza, and you know, seeing them. Seeing video clips of them that makes them real, and you looked at the cars, and I was literally in tears actually, because so they hit one car and then they were trying to run to the next car and to the next car, and so I was just horrified. And I saw someone being interviewed, and they saying, "Oh, it was a mistake," but there was no apology, there was no explanation of why this has happened, and it's just very shocking. You know, these people trying to help.
I opened the Anchor this morning on that subject. Yeah, they haven't apologised. It may be a mistake, but it's still murder.
Yes.
Netanyahu, I know from other correspondence with Mirador, is loathed in Israel. He has a grip on power that's almost Hitlerian or Putinesque. He's very right-wing, very pro-settler, very anti-Palestinian. And of course, now, even he doesn't see it because people like him don't, but he's gone completely too far. It's not just on humanitarian levels, it's international law, international relations. It's the strongest language you will ever hear from Biden about an Israeli prime minister. I mean, he is using very strong language. It's unheard of that a US government would not veto a resolution in the United Nations to tell Israel to shut up and stop fighting. But the US didn't veto it, it abstained. But to the likes of Netanyahu, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. And as I mentioned in my intro at 8 o'clock, one of the correspondents on here was a friend of Stuart Dolby's from university, a chap called Richard Porges, who, rather like Harry Atherton, but considerably younger, has a very deep worldwide knowledge of politics, used to work for the UN. But I think he was the PA, Keith, I think he was the PA to the Secretary General at one time, wasn't he? Do you remember with the interview with Stuart, Richard Porges?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to remember his background.
He was a very high up aide.
Yeah,
I think to the Secretary General at one point. But he is a Jew himself. He's got relatives in Israel all over, and he basically said they hate him. They hate him he said if he weren't in power, he would be in prison. That's what Porges basically said. And of course now we are seeing all these demonstrations in Israel, including the families of the hostages. But he just shrugs it all off because.
Yeah. Can I pose a question to the two of you? Is it possible to be at that level of power in any country at all where elections take place, as opposed to just grabbing it? Is there anybody who is a nice person? Hollywood always thinks so, but is in reality, is there anybody that's nice at that level?
No, I'd agree. I mean, and it's a power. You know, to want to be in that role in the first place is all about power. And I think to be a powerful person, you have to have no morals. You know, you see it all over the world.
Yeah, you have to be. You can pay lip service to being caring and moral.
Yeah,
but that's all they do. You know, they'll sell their own grandma for a vote. And there's the old saying, you know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you look back throughout all of history, if you go even in England, if you look at all the kings, the queens, were they nice? No, you were beheaded, you were burnt in oil, and anybody in power, they're most hideous deaths.
Oh, the brutality of even up to Georgian times, they were still hanging, drawing, and quartering people.
It's just awful. And Victoria, and you think like, you know, you eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. If you stole something, get your hand chopped off. And it's just
in Victorian times, children were hanged for stealing.
Yeah, and you've only got to go to the Tower of London to look at all the very scary contraptions that were used to mutilate, torture, and murder people.
No, it's appalling, absolutely appalling. But there we are. I agree with you. I mean, one of the photographs I've seen talk about an accurate airstrike. There's a hole. It's like puncturing a tin can. There's a hole in the roof of one of the vehicles. So if you imagine the precision of that strike,
Mm.
it's extraordinary. It's like a bullet hole, but that's a missile. How is that a mistake?
And that was one thing I was going to say. The sense of an accident. How, for me, dropping a glass is an accident, or tripping up the step. But to make 3 mistakes,
No.
is calculated.
And the aid agencies are saying that the 3 Brits, veterans who were killed, who were vets but security, it had all been agreed and cleared with the IDF.
Yeah.
So some rogue commander clearly has gone well beyond the pale here.
And is that because obviously now aid workers are withdrawing, because they're worried about their volunteers out there. So is this a point? Is this a demonstration? Is this to make a point? Is this to make sure that aid is withdrawn?
Well, he's clearly, he denies it, but they always do deny. He's using starvation as a weapon of war.
That's what I would have thought.
There's no doubt about that.
And they've showed us some other examples on the news as well of other aid workers in trucks that have been targeted. I think one was just carrying flour, which is obviously critical for making bread. And they're targeted. It's not the first time an accident has happened.
No, I mean, and these are basic supplies. We're not talking a takeaway from Waitrose. We're talking absolute basics to make bread, just bread. And he's also destroying Gaza. There'll be nothing left. It'll be like Ukraine after Putin, because bit by bit he will destroy Ukraine. There'll be no infrastructure left. There'll be nothing to conquer, in my opinion.
Yeah, there'll be nothing.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah, it's just the power.
They'll go in and they will, in their own way, rebuild Ukraine in their image, as they're doing in the occupied provinces. They're brainwashing children. They're forbidding the speaking of Ukrainian. They're getting children to write supposed letters of support to Russian soldiers, thanking them for liberating them from Nazis. It is absolutely, it's exactly what Hitler did. This is exactly what the Nazis did.
I was just about to say that. Do you remember?
Exactly what the Nazis did before the Second World War. They brainwashed the population. I mean, I remember when one of my kids at senior school, the curriculum included Nazi Germany. And it took me back to when I did a project at my senior school on Hitler, all those decades ago. And I looked at some of the textbooks that it was either Charlie, one of my sons had. And it educated me because it showed how every layer of German society was made to be anti-Semitic. Even exam questions were set, maths questions, for example, were set, and the answer would always blame the Jew, always. It would always be, a Merchant of Venice type scenario. The greedy Jew with the pointed nose, ripping off the patriotic German. I mean, it was just, and this is all going in their minds. Children's minds are like sponges. They just soak it up. And they become bigots. Now, they were doing that since the mid-1930s. So by the time we get to the Second World War, that's where you get the fanatics. That's why their soldiers were fanatical to the end.
No, I would say to a great extent, we're all brainwashed from birth. We're born, we're told to do this, we're told to do that. That's what life should be. I try and break away from those self-limiting beliefs that were imposed upon me and change my perception. Or every day I'm always looking at how to perceive something differently. And I was going to say, that the image of earlier Russia taking over Ukraine was a bit like the start to Dad's Army. Do you remember the map of Dad's Army?
Yes,
The arrow
yes.
going across and then
Yes.
retreating. That's very sort of powerful imagery.
The problem is, if we were to start singing "Who do you think you are, Mr. Putin," I don't think he'd understand,
No.
and he'd probably send a nuke over to London. But there we are. Now it's 9 o'clock. John Prideaux is waiting in the wings. Susie, are you working today?
I am. Yes, I am.
Well, I'll get John in to say hello. I'm sure he'll want to do that, and
Lovely.
then we'll bid you farewell. I will see you a week today.
Yeah.
But Keith will see you on Monday. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Philip.
Monsieur Prideaux.
Morning, all. Morning, Susie. Morning, Keith. Morning, Philip.
Good morning,
Right,
John.
John.
You're nauseatingly bouncy this morning, Prideaux.
Oh, well, the sun's come out, hasn't it? Just. I don't know how long it's going to be there.
Yes.
Not here.
Yeah,
It's raining.
The sun's come out. The bins are out. The trees are pruned. I mean, it. You know.
Sorry, Pollard. Excuse me,
Pollarded.
Could you be accurate in what you say, Prideaux, please?
I'll do my best. I'll let
You're supposed to be a techie.
Well,
Anyway,
trees
but-
don't fall within the techie sphere.
No,
So I'm allowed to be loose
what
with my
Susie and
trees.
Keith don't know is locally here, you are known as our neighbourhood ray of sunshine, aren't you?
Well, if that's what you say, Phil. Yeah.
Well, that's the rumour.
Is it?
I can see no truth in it myself, but each to their own. I'm a.
So that's a compliment. You're a ray of sunshine.
I'm a bit of an.
I know, but a compliment from Phil. You have to be very careful.
Backhanded one.
I think that's a tad unfair. But you're right. I am a bit of a cynic, and I'm certainly sarcastic.
Yeah.
Well, John, I know this is going to break your heart, but I'm going to say goodbye to Susie now, because unlike us three, she's actually got to go to work. Bless her. Anyway, enjoy your breakfast, Susie.
I'll have to get over the scalping bit first.
Yes.
So yeah, it might take me a few hours to stop imagining Keith scalping my kitchen.
Bye bye.
Right, take care.
Bye.
Well, John, how are you?
I'm very good, Phil. Very good. Yes. Yes. Had a nice weekend. I had half a weekend in Dorset and half a weekend in Arundel.
Oh, you did go away, did you?
Just for a couple of days. Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Am I right? You have a place out there?
Yeah, got a little
very
bolt
nice.
hole in Dorset.
Yes. Well, very necessary.
Well,
Very
especially when you've got neighbours like I've got, you've got to have somewhere to get away.
Well, there has to be some respite. I mean, having any sort of contact with the likes of me must really do your head in.
Yeah. I know this is a bit off piste, and I don't know whether our viewers would be interested, but I saw Jim outside this morning wearing a hat and a coat.
Yes, well,
Is
that
he
is
not
very
well?
rare.
Mm.
I mean, just to put the viewers in the picture, Jim, Keith, is he lives between John and me on our road, and he's an ex-Marine, and he's an ex-very high civil servant looking after the interests of the Royal Marines in the Home and Defence Office. Now, normally, if it's -6 and snowing, Jim would be in shirt sleeves.
Short sleeves. Yeah.
Short sleeve shirt. He is incredible. I often say to those in my house, look, there's Jim, doing a Putin, really, just trying to be a hard man. So it's when you see Jim, wearing a coat and a hat is very extreme, then you know the weather's bad.
Or it's some cunning disguise.
Yes.
Maybe he's gone undercover or something.
Well, I have seen him wear a parka, which I find, with the hood up, which I find most disconcerting. But Well, I was reading today, John, on the Beeb, that over 200 artists have signed an open letter to bemoan the use of AI to threaten their work, their jobs, and whatever. Did you see that?
I didn't see it, but I've seen similar. You know, there's been noise on the on the blogs and the and so on. So yeah, and of course this is following on from the US, who they complained a lot earlier and got some safeguards put in place. But I haven't seen the latest, so I'm not quite sure exactly what they said. But
yeah, well, they're quite well-known artists, and
I think there was one, I can't remember who it was now, who they were. They'd been doing the narration for something or voiceover for a major series that I hadn't seen, and I think it was a Netflix one, and they were basically told we don't need you anymore because we're going to be we've had the go ahead to use AI voice cloning to do the voiceover.
Yes, well, in this open letter, it says a stop must be put to, quote, the predatory use of AI, unquote. And then earlier in the week, there was the rather sad story of the girl who was deep faked by her best friend, and links to various very accessible porn sites where her face has been attached to a female body doing all sorts of things, which has deeply upset her. You mentioned the USA. There has been a deal struck. It's not a treaty, but a British representative was in Washington this week signing a document that the two countries have agreed to test the validity and usage of AI, calling it the defining technological challenge of our generation. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting because I felt that was a little bit wishy-washy.
Yes,
and
well,
if the cynics amongst us may have noticed that it came out just at the same time the EU was the MEPs have just passed laws around controlling AI and categorizing AI products. So
right,
which is the first piece of AI legislation worldwide to actually. I mean, there's still a few stages to go through, but it's broadly thought to be a rubber stamp now.
I must confess this doesn't upset me too much, because those very people that are objecting to AI is there are a number of documentaries, for instance, that I could have voiced and I would have charged 2 and 6pence. But they decided they wanted, without seeing him, the voice of Tom Hanks, who wouldn't do that sort of thing anywhere near as well as I do, and he'll charge £10,000, £15,000. So he stuffed me in the eye. So if AI is going to stuff him in the eye, I'm on the side of AI.
we could clone your voice, Keith, and yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's you'll probably still only get tuppence halfpenny. But there's.
I don't mind getting tuppence halfpenny. It's satisfaction of doing it.
Yeah, and also, of course, I think that's where there does need to be controls, because I'd be quite happy if somebody wants to clone my voice because they like my voice and use it, then I would like some recompense for that. So I've sold my sound. So it's great because I haven't got to sit down for 2 days in front of a microphone and read through all the script, because I just need to provide one sentence. But a deal should be struck. At the moment, it's too easy for people to just skim a voice and then use it, which is interesting because one of the other stories this week, it's all kind of related, is OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT and so on, and Sam Altman, who's famously sacked and reinstated. He announced that that OpenAI are pulling or stalling the rollout of their voice cloning technology, claiming that it's too good, and they fear of how it might be used, which I think we need to look carefully at that, because again, I think there are a couple of things going on here. With with the US and the UK announcement about working together, with the EU laws coming out, what the industry wants to do is show that it can regulate itself. So it's possible that there's an angle there that whilst they might be genuinely fearful of the risks that their own product could unleash on the world, by announcing that they're not going to release it in this election year, it said, look, we can regulate ourselves. We're the good guys. So, I mean, that's interesting. The timing of all these things, I don't think, is unrelated.
Well, no, just pausing there. I'd like to understand your reference to the election year. What difference does it make, or are you suggesting that you think there's some political angle here?
Well, there was the incident with Joe Biden's voice cloned,
Yes.
to encourage people to not vote in the primary elections. So it's that sort of thing where a significant trusted figure could be seen to be encouraging the wrong types of behavior, or spreading false news and false information.
So we go back, although it wasn't vocal, we go back to the one I saw weeks ago of a fake Donald Trump. No, a Donald Trump surrounded by fake Black Americans.
Yes.
All sort of hugging each other and happy with him. And the maker of that admitted that it was fake, and he never purported for it to be true. But of course, there are going to be the idiots who think it is real.
And the damage is done. Yeah, by the time
Yes.
it's got to those
out of the bag, isn't it?
There are a lot of people that are easier to influence than others, and so that's what they prey on.
One of Trump's favourite sayings is that I appeal and I endorse the uneducated. He's actually said that. So they've all got to vote, and that's what he wants. Anyway, he mustn't get sidetracked. I mean, on a more positive side, I read an article whereby AI, it claims they have discovered that using AI, it can trace cancers that your normal scanner won't find. I don't know whether you read that.
I did, yeah. In fact, I listened to there was a program on, I think, good old Radio 4, and in fact there were two. I think there were two stories. There was the one about lung cancer, which it was able to detect, and there was another. I think there was another one, similar type of story, which is AI was being able to pick out things that the experienced radiographers weren't able to spot. It would have had to have progressed further before they saw it. So that's very encouraging. And I think there's a term I came across this week which I quite like, which is narrow AI, and it's where AI is used in very specific ways.
Yes.
I don't know if I don't know if you've shop at Sainsbury's at all.
I do online.
You do online, so you wouldn't have seen this, but I was down in a Sainsbury's. It must have only been a month ago, and put the old bananas on the weighing machine, ready to select my fruit, and it just magically said fair trade bananas, 94p, and I thought, oh, how did it?
So you don't buy organic then?
How did it do that? Well, I don't think they had the option that day, but had I bought organic, it would have been able to identify it, which is very clever. And it's just a little camera above the scales, and it looks at what you put on the scales, and then gives you your ticket. And so I thought that was a very good example of a very specific, narrow solution which works.
No, I
very
agree
well.
with you.
Yeah.
That's the good guy. No, absolutely.
The other thing that struck me is it's probably has been, and I tried finding information about this new advancement in Sainsbury's, and there's absolutely nothing. There's nothing on Sainsbury's website. There's a few people blogging about their experience and how surprised they were and so on. I couldn't find any official announcement from Sainsbury's about this. And I'm guessing that they've been training their systems in shops for months, maybe even longer. So you put your bananas on and you press the banana button, and this is happening in thousands. Well, I think they got 1,400 shops or so, with a couple of weighing machines in each one. So you've got thousands and thousands of examples training the AI, so that when you then switch it over, it's just a flick of a switch software change. So I thought that's quite impressive and a good example of a very neat and helpful solution. And it's almost surreptitiously, just working its way into our lives, and we go, oh, after a while you hardly even notice, you just take it for granted.
Well, exactly. It's slowly catchy monkey, isn't it? It's very under the radar, and you, as you say, you hardly notice it. You just accept it as another further move in technology.
Yeah,
it's just what we're used to.
Yeah. The other example. So you may have noticed, Phil. You may not. It may have passed you by. I've got a new car.
No. I know you've got the new car because you deliberately drove it past me 3 times the other day.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you were paying attention.
Then you lowered the window and I fell for it. Said, "Oh, new car, John." And you went, "Yes. Have you only just noticed? It's rather smart, isn't it?"
So
go on.
So one of the new features is adaptive headlights. So the old car had a similar thing, but it wasn't very good, and I didn't enable it. But this one, it actually blocks out. So you've got your full beam on, and it blocks out where cars are. So it's like a matrix display. So it's constantly monitoring the road and creating little dark squares round cars, so you don't dazzle anybody, but everything in between.
Well, that I do approve of.
So
I don't drive anything like as much as I once would have done, but night driving, my God, oncoming headlights. Oh.
And I was all prepared for it sort of not to work very well, but actually it was pretty good. So I think I'll leave that one switched on.
Yes, well, I think you should. I mean, I'm glad that it's overcome your pessimistic nature.
Yes, a glimmer of light.
You need to stop being a half-empty man, because you'll end up like me.
I know. And who would want that? Who would want that?
Well, precisely. I don't want it. Nobody else does.
Scary thought. So
no, it is very scary. It is very scary.
So I think going back to the legislation and so on. So I think it's good that things are starting to move, but it's so slow, and they need. I feel they really need to step on the gas, and get safeguards in place, and start to start to create the right kind of behaviours in the industry. And the other thing actually about the EU, which is a reason why I think the US and UK sort of quickly made their announcement and signed an agreement, is that however good or bad the EU legislation is, it kind of it puts a mark in the sand as this
Yes,
is
it's a blueprint. Yeah, absolutely.
and products coming out of here you can trust more than you can trust products from elsewhere. So, and I think industry will respond to that, because customer trust is pretty important when you're trying to sell something, which at the moment everything's still fairly free. There are some cost models coming into place, but a lot of this technology, the things that are getting the news grabbers, like the deep fakes and the clonings and so on, they're still not able to, as far as I can see, make much money out of these products at the moment, because they're not perfect, and a lot of money's been thrown into these tools by venture capitalists and so on, and they're going to be wanting to see a return.
Right, hang on. You used a phrase there. I don't understand it. Venture catalysts?
Capitalists.
Oh, capitalists.
So
Sorry,
funding companies. So they're
yes.
putting a lot of money in, and they want to see something back.
Of course.
So some of these medical products, the medical industry's got a lot of money in it. They'll probably do all right. But some of the more frivolous, entertainment orientated features, there's less of a obvious way that they're going to get their cash back on those. So it'd be interesting to see how that develops.
Now, John, you're kind enough to come on once a fortnight. I'm being quite genuine now, and educate us all on many subjects, but at the moment AI. But in terms of your own business, is your, without any trade secrets being let out the bag, I mean, are you and your partners using AI yourselves to improve your business?
Not directly, no. I mean, our business is around relationships and advice and guidance and so on. But what we are helping our clients do is understand AI and help them make the most of it. So we are doing work in that area around business process improvement, and helping the quality of sort of data orientated process flows and that kind of thing. But we've also, I suppose we are in a way, our most direct use of it is creating games to help teach people how to train AI models. So we're using AI tools, off-the-shelf tools, that in particular there's one that recognizes documents, so it can read text on documents and pick out key words and entities, and you can train that yourself to determine to train it which words you want to identify in a document or an email or off a receipt or an invoice, that sort of thing. So yeah, we're doing some work around that to help people learn how to do it, but also learn how AI kind of behaves and how dumb it is in a way. It's very clever once you've got it to work, and you've trained it, so it can give the impression that it's intelligent, but actually it's only as good as how you've trained it and the data that you've given it to train it.
So it's a bit like Keith.
And his sense of color coordination.
Well, there's that. No, in all seriousness, so your company, Wise Reach, actually produces these games, but these aren't playful games. These are educational games.
Yeah, they're serious. They're serious but fun. Yeah. And we in the past we've created other games around teaching different behaviours for software development, for engineers and project managers and so on, to help them develop the skills that they need. So we like that. Turning things into games just gets people's engagement.
No, I can see that. So do you and all your colleagues, your staff, do you stay put in the office, or do you go out on site, as it were, to help?
Well, pre-pandemic, it was pretty much all on-site work.
Yes.
So we go to our clients. Hence, we've got a very tiny office that we're never in. Post-pandemic, there's been quite a shift to home-based working in the sorts of industries we work in: insurance, banking, in those sort of service sectors. There's a lot of the work can be done remotely, and meetings can be had much as we're having our discussion here. So you've got people on screen.
Yeah, what I had in mind was, like, look, I'm an interested party. I want to buy one of your games, your video games, to understand A, B, and C. Yeah, well, what we would do. So it's aimed at teams and organisations. So we would sell a series of sessions, probably 3 to 4 hours each, maybe 4 or 5 of them over a few months. We'd either conduct the games like this remotely, so everybody would be remote and participate through their screens, and we would have our online versions of our games that we would use, or we would come to you. We'd all sit in a room and we'd do the same thing, but face to face. But it's it's either all in a room or all online, one or the other. Not a mix.
John, can I understand what we're really talking about? For part of my career, I would train broadcasters and journalists. For instance, there are some people that won't forgive me, but I started Russia Today and started with an empty room, and then built the team, training the journalists and so on and so forth. But I went to Moscow to do that. Now, could your company develop a series of games so that all I do is I send those games via satellite or whatever, or on the internet, and say, here's a game, follow this game, and that will train you?
More or less. So we could certainly do it all remotely. We've already got games that run remotely, but what we would be there. It wouldn't be a thing that we just give it to you and say there you go, because a lot of the education is through sort of us observing what people are doing, how they're reacting, and pointing things out to them. Do you realize what you just did there? That particular type of the way you made that decision was, did you realize you were using this kind of method? Maybe you could have done it a different way. So we have that discussion about the experience that people have. So the typical format is some theory, then a game to reinforce the theory, and then a discussion about how they engage with that game, how it worked, and then what are you going to do next? So when you go back to work, how are you going to apply what you've just learnt about? And then we'll come back in like a month's time with the next session, the next topic. And before we start that, we'll say, okay, so how did it go? Did you manage to apply any of what you learned before? So that's how it works. So we get a kind of cadence to it, a series of related topics.
Right.
But we run them all. We can run them either all remotely or in face-to-face sessions. So,
But inevitably, as I suspected, there has to be, at least initially, a level of supervision.
absolutely. We facilitate the sessions. Yeah. So yeah.
Do you, if I may ask, I mean, Keith's mentioned working in Moscow. I'm not going to mention Russia, but I mean, you have foreign clients, clients based abroad.
We have clients. Well, all of our clients, I think, at the moment have got a global. So they'll have people based across the world. So I've got one client in particular. They've got Australia, Singapore, Europe, South America, North America, UK. And so quite often, we don't usually get somebody from everywhere at the same time because of Asia in particular, and Australia in another time zone. But so sometimes sessions will be split so that we cover half the planet in one session and the other half in another session. So which normally requires an early start.
Well, yes, it will do. But
it's become very. It's interesting because over the years, I've seen global organizations struggle to sort of bring everybody together, and there's a lot of parochial processes and behaviors and different legislation as well, which they can't change. But trying to get a common approach to things is quite difficult. But with the development advances in communication and the acceptance of it as well, I think.
That's the second stage, isn't it?
Yeah, and it has improved. So the tools were all a bit ropey to start with. They've gradually got a lot better, a lot more reliable. And one of our clients actually does. They do training. They do a different type of training, and they develop their own version of like a collaboration Zoom tool, which is tailored to deliver their type of training. So you can have it's easy for the trainer to jump between rooms and pairs of people doing exercises together and things like that. So it's very clever.
It's true.
There's another one. There's another tool which is rather cool, where you can, if you move close to somebody in a room, in your virtual room, you can hear them and you can have a conversation, and then you can move away from that person, so your dot on the screen, to somebody else, and you can go and talk to them and have a conversation without hearing the other people. So you can move around in this room and have conversations without having to disturb anybody else. That's a good spatial chat.
That sounds clever. I think the Black Horse could do with something like that. What do you think, Keith?
Absolutely.
Well, I think Keith is a big fan, as you've heard him say, I'm sure, John. He's a big fan of background noise, natural noise.
Yes, I mean the whole ethos of Mirador is it breaks every broadcast rule in the book. Whereas the BBC and ITV and so on would cut out sound, we deliberately put ourselves in the middle of it, which is actually frowned upon by most broadcasters. But the more I watch the sort of thing that we do on the established television, is the more I get upset that it sounds phony and that it is not communicating. And I was going to ask you, slightly tongue in cheek, is one of the things I will not, or I wouldn't in my days in commercial broadcasting, is I would not hire an actor to read the news because he sounds like an actor. Now, you two are totally natural. And every piece of evidence shows that talking to people as if you're in conversation intrigues them and draws them in and makes them listen, rather more than somebody with rounded tones. Could we develop a piece of AI software that would take an actor and teach him to talk naturally on TV?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that's difficult about acting is trying to not act, because that's what you're trying. You want to be seen to be natural.
Yes.
So it's interesting.
Yes.
But
Keith,
there's a tendency when you see words in front of you to put an emphasis on them, which is unnatural. Whereas if it just comes out of your brain, it just comes out in a different way. But if you're reading it, it goes through another section.
I mean, Keith, did you ask that question in the knowledge that John is actually a fully trained actor?
No, I didn't, because I would not have guessed.
You can't believe anything you see. This could be quite different.
I mean, but to call Prino natural, he's stretching it, because he is in fact an AI deepfake.
And would you be able to tell the difference?
No.
See, it was interesting when I did the thing the other week with the voice cloning. That was trying to just be natural, to take the clip, which it would then use to create the clone voice. I actually found that quite hard to talk or read something which was natural. It was quite hard to do. But I think I put it down to that I was reading something. I probably shouldn't have tried to read something.
I mean, I'll tell you what upsets me at the moment.
Is when screens freeze.
Is that literally, because I watch the BBC a fair amount, same as Philip, and is they still obviously teach people, particularly locally, to do this, and 20,000 sheep got loose and 50,000 shepherds chased them, instead of 20,000 sheep got loose and there were 50,000 shepherds chasing them down the road, sort of thing. Is this unnatural thing, which is that's what I was taught
like a
60 years
emphasis.
ago. And research and so on has moved on to show that sort of thing is old-fashioned and doesn't appeal. It doesn't grip people. So really, the training is very old-fashioned in broadcasting, and I would love to get my hands on them and change it.
On a technical point, there's one thing you need to be careful of, is when background noise in one channel cuts out the sound from the other channels. So, if Phil's speaking and then somebody bangs a glass in the background in the pub, it will cut out Phil momentarily.
Yes, to some extent. But when I'm in the pub and I'm talking to, let's say, Philip or you or whatever across the table, is the background noise cuts it out anyway. I'm used to that. That's my daily. Is how many times have you heard people say, well, the background noise will stop me hearing you. And would you repeat it? Is the same sort of research. I base my whole way of looking at broadcasting on 60 years of looking into things and research. The research that's done in various parts of the world, and then totally ignored. But I was very lucky when I first started, way back in 1963. Yes, 1963, to have people who cared enough to do a lot of research and the sort of thing that people accepted in those days of broadcasting.
Mm-hmm. There's a feature on Zoom for musicians, which turns off the suppression on all of the channels, so everybody can hear everybody else at the same time. It doesn't try to block anything out, so that's quite handy. I don't know if StreamYard has a similar feature, but that might be.
I don't think it does. I mean, StreamYard, now I think I've worked out how to use it properly. It's very good, but it's pretty basic. I mean, you would find it incredibly basic. I don't think.
Although sometimes that's a good thing. There's less to go wrong.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, an idiot like me wouldn't be able to do anything more complicated than this. Yeah. And even now, there are glitches. Yeah. On which point, Keith, I've alerted you to the Facebook banners. You need to sign into your Facebook account.
Yes.
To get rid of those 6 hazard warnings.
Yes, I've actually looked at this, and it's somebody way back when we first got StreamYard, we've had it for 5 years or more, actually signed those in, and it's somebody who we don't have anything to do with anymore. So I'm going to have to take a little bit of time to do it. But we've got a few days to do it, and actually, I think it has happened in the past, and StreamYard say we've got it covered, and they do actually make sure you don't.
No, I'm sorry to say this with John, not as if we're ignoring him. Just while I've got you, if you click on the hazard warning, and there are 6 of them, it says we will reinstate this once you've signed into your account. Now, if you're saying you don't know how to sign into your account, because as usual, the password's gone or somebody else knew it, then we're at risk of not being on Facebook from next week.
Right. Well, we'll take a look at it. We've got a couple of days to do it.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to quickly cover today was the latest on the quest for getting a depiction of a very successful and experienced journalist whizzing around Lewis on a scooter.
I can't think who you're referring to, John.
I think if I could, I'll try sharing my screen again. So this might require you to press a button somewhere on your side.
Oh, hang on, that's asking a lot.
So this will be a test. Oh, wait a minute. It's a test for me. I've got to press the right buttons as well on my end. So let's share a screen, an entire screen. Let's do that one. Boom, 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 boom.
Yes, it's come up. Hang on.
Uh-huh. Try and get it into presentation. Ooh, is that the right? That's probably got the wrong screen now, hasn't it? I'll just leave it in this mode. It's easier. So this is what
you've made him look like some Italian pop star.
Yeah, this was a very simple. It's using a new tool as well called Leonardo, which is I believe it.
Oh, that's appropriate.
An Australian-based company, but it's very similar to the others as far as I can see. So this was the senior journalist I chose my words carefully there. On an electric scooter jumping a red light. So I'm not sure that's an electric scooter. It's interesting the terminology that's.
No, it's not. It's a Vespa.
Yes, looks like a Vespa to me. So this one was a bit more successful. Although I haven't changed anything on the scooter front. But
That is brilliant.
We've added the red hat. So I realised I'd forgotten the red hat. But it's not jumping the red light. It doesn't seem to be picking that up at all. So it's missed that. In fact, in the next one, it must have interpreted the word jumping, because this chap is actually jumping on the scooter.
That is not Keith.
No, it's not Keith. I mean, I suppose I could have put Keith and see what it came up with. And I don't know if this is Lewis or somewhere that looks like Lewis, but I
wondered about that. It looks very familiar to me.
Yes,
I've added
that.
It
is Lewis.
It is Lewis High Street.
That's the Upper High Street in Lewis.
Yeah. So that's pretty. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty clever that it's picked that up.
It is indeed.
But it's some things it hasn't. So I've said with a camera, but there's no camera in sight here. I can't see anything, so it's missed that. So it's interesting how it's quite selective about what it picks up.
Yes.
And then we've added the wide brimmed red hat because it kept coming out with a bobble hat. And we've got some sort of strap there as well. So
yes.
we're getting there. We're
yes. Will you send those to me, John?
I will. And also, this particular tool isn't obsessed with beards. So the other one I used the other week, Bard, that if you put senior or aging or anything like that, it just puts a beard on.
Bard is beard without the E, isn't it? That
it is. You can even say don't have a beard, and it still puts one on. The other thing you might notice, a little feature of these tools, is that it kind of muddles up the words on the shops. I guess that's the sort of privacy thing. So that looks like I don't know what kind of shop that is.
Yeah.
I recognise it, but I imagine it says something different above the door.
I think you'll find that in reality is a delicatessen. But I may be wrong. Or Keith, is it the old Men's Outfitters?
No, it's further down than that. I think it's the jewelers.
Yeah, I did wonder about the jewelers.
Yeah.
So there you are. I did do a slide on the Sainsbury's shopping as well. Just I might as well throw that up there as it's there. So empty. Stick your bananas in. And lo and behold, tells you what they are. So
it's when it starts saying "Thank you, Mr. Prideaux," that you need to worry.
Well, yes, it could do that as well. That's not beyond the realms of possibility, is it? With a little camera pointing outwards, and if I've signed up and shared my picture, so there we go.
Strangely enough, on the way in this morning, I don't know why I just started to muse about various things, and I'm going to go and get a sticker made. Is Mirador Television's news car.
News car.
Yes.
And you'll put that on.
Well, Mirador is a little windmill, so a scooter will be a little news car.
What type of scooter do you have, Keith? Is it the stand up one, or is it the?
It's a four-wheeler. It's a mobility scooter.
Oh, right.
But it looks very much like that. Yeah.
Excellent. So
Keith, inevitably I see Stuart meandering in the background. What time is he on?
It's 10 o'clock. If we can wrap up in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah. Any final observations, Mr. P?
No, I don't think. I think I'll be keeping a close eye on the on this EU legislation. So maybe next time.
Yes, if you would, please.
We can.
I'll have a look at that myself.
Yeah, yeah, and see how that affects, how it's going to work in practice. Because
Yes, quite.
yeah, that'd be interesting. I might have I've got a little. I could demonstrate one of our little games. We've got a AI fact or fake news game, so maybe we can.
Oh,
Throw
that'll
that
be
up.
great.
Really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll be great.
fun.
So, shall we make a date for 2 weeks' time then?
2 weeks' time. That sounds like a good plan. Oh, what date is that exactly?
Well,
Might
today
be-
is the 3rd, so it'll be the 17th.
17th, the day before my birthday. So
Well, we better have some prosecco.
Well, we need some deep fake cake, don't we?
deep fake cake. I don't like the sound of that.
No, you weren't meant to. But all right, John. Well,
Okay.
we've got Mr. Dolby, the Dolby effect, waiting in the background. So I'll bid you farewell. Then I'll work out with Keith whether I stay on and do Stuart and him or not. Okay.
Okie dokie. Right. Good to talk to you. See you again soon.
Thanks again, John.
Okay.
Okay, so let me ask Stuart,
Yeah.
is your guest coming in here or do you do him online?
Still, he can't come in anywhere else, can he? Because the front door's locked. So he's coming around the side.
But he's coming into the pub.
Yes.
Right, okay. Yeah, you stay on if you like.
No, I don't need to stand to be involved because I need a comfort break and a cup of tea and stuff.
Okay.
And I've still got family here as well. Do I end the stream and you do a new one with Stuart?
That would be the easiest thing, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will bid you and the viewer farewell. Bye
All
bye,
right.
playmates or Toodaloo campers. And Keith, I'll see you. I'll see you and Harry on Monday.
Yes. Okay. We'll see you before then, I'm sure, because it's only Wednesday.
Well, if you need any anchoring help on Friday, I can help.
I think we will. I have one or two things to talk to you about anyway. So perhaps if you're around this afternoon, I'll email you.
Please do.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye to both. Bye bye.
Toodle-pip.